The newest branch of the military wants you. That's right, gamers, you're a valuable commodity and you didn't even know it. And hey, I think this sounds like a kind of fun job. What am I talking about? Well, hang around. That game place. Hi, folks, it's me, CC, with my good friend Stone Cold Loki. How are you doing, Loki?
Doing great. I'm excited about this news. Let's go to space.
That's right. Let's go to space indeed. As a matter of fact, since the cat's out of the bag, the Space Force wants you. That's right, gamers. They want you. And me, I'm a little old, but maybe they still want Loki. But they want you because, well, a lot of branches of military have wanted you before. We're going to read the sub-headline here over from Inside Hook, which is a magazine, basically. And it says, while other branches dabble in video games, the newest arm is adamant about leveraging gaming technologies, and the community of gamers to advance our military. Loki, how does that sound?
I want space lasers culture. I want space lasers and pews, and yeah, let's do it.
I think we've seen that before in a lot of movies before, but I'm pretty sure that that sounds like a lot of fun. And if you're a gamer, well, you have a chance. Now, there's a branch of the U.S. military that's ordered to protect the nation's satellite network and defend the country against attack from beyond the sky, making sure everything from cellular communications to, well, digital economy to everything else just keeps running, which makes a lot of sense. Maybe they'll also be helpful in deterring, random outages from pulses from the sun, things like that. I don't know, but it sounds like it's pretty interesting position. So they're looking for gamers to lead their charge. Most Americans know very little about the U.S. Space Force, which is the sixth branch of the country's military. They join the Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, and Coast Guard. Admittedly, the name sounds like the title of a 1950s sci-fi radio show, but its theoretical history dates back to the end of the Second World War as the U.S. accelerated in its rocket programs. Though officially installed in 2019 under then-President Donald Trump, you can trace the Space Force's development path back through the Obama administration to the Reagan-era concept of the Star Wars Defense Initiative, all the way back to the Eisenhower era. Wow, Loki, did you realize it was this much depth to this?
They've been thinking about this for a long time. I don't know if you're a big Orson Scott Card fan, but there are some books called Ender's Game, Ender's War, and in those books, it deals with raising kids up, teaching them about three-dimensional spaces, computers, and games to eventually let them take the place of current-day Space Force so that they will be the next generation of spacers and space warriors, colonizers, and all that fun jazz.
Wow, that's amazing. Well, I guess those are good reads. I think they even made a movie out of Ender's Game, if I'm not mistaken.
They did.
But you can definitely check that out. Obviously, if you have a streaming service, I mean, it's probably ubiquitous at this point. But to make sure that the world learns about the Space Force and understands its function, the nonprofit Space Force Association, the SFA, came together to tell the service's stories and celebrate its personnel. Garfield Reeves Stevens is one half of a highly successful writing and producing team with his wife, Judith. Together, they now serve as story and technical consultants for SFA. Interesting. They were co-producers of the fourth season of the Star Trek series Enterprise, with the Reeves Stevenses also developed, produced, and wrote for Batman, the animated series. Wow. Phantom 2040, Flash Gordon, G.I. Joe, and Primeval New World. Meanwhile, their multiple tech thriller novels put them on the New Times and Los Angeles Times bestsellers lists. With Space Force, their flair for fiction has transitioned to describing some very real threats. Wow, so they were actually bringing in, their own version of propagandists, it sounds like, but
sci-fi writers.
Ones. That's right, gifted ones. Well, and that's kind of where the future came from, right, Loki? Was sci-fi writers, right?
Some of the best stories, some of the best movies, some of the best books we've ever had have come from sci-fi writers. So I don't doubt that they're using that, and they're going to keep using that to promote this.
Yeah, and apparently this image here is from Space Force Gaming, which is crazy. So Space Force is absolutely crucial, says Garfield. So much of modern warfare is centered on space-based assets. Meanwhile, we live in a space-based civilization, from communication satellites to GPS system that controls shipping and banking networks. Yee, that's terrifying. While most of the Space Force does remain highly classified, Reeves Stevens adds that the service draws from an unusual talent pool compared to other military branches. Their recruits, called Guardians, that's a cool name, are both tech savvy and imaginative and include coders, hackers, and gaming enthusiasts. Obviously, we can't look up and see satellites. Space Force needs Guardians who think conceptually to operate in an active strategic space. Gamers are perfect for that. What do you think of that, Loki?
I wonder if their guardians have a destiny.
Wow. That was a fun joke. Hopefully somebody gets it. But in looking at it, it seems like a lot of people are qualified for this. They just may not know it. Let's see. One of the folks there breaks it down, saying, "I'd break down gaming in the Space Force into two categories: fun and serious games. Fun is exactly what you think, but at a massive scale. A few years ago, myself and others were on a mission to convince the Air Force, Space Force didn't exist yet, to host and fund a gaming community for the service. Today, that community is Air Space Force Gaming and hosts 41,000 airmen and guardians around the world. My goodness, that's quite the network."
That is great. Imagine the multiplayer possibilities on that one.
Oh, imagine, yeah, with 41,000 people. Plus, Sullivan explains that why of promoting community gaming is to build organic camaraderie and connection. Well, that makes sense. Whether it's via video games, RPGs, or tabletop and board games. That makes a lot of sense, too. A lot of strategy involved in all of that. As for Sullivan's serious games, he describes them as more practical and aimed at building a better fighter in the real world. The concept of serious games and gamification of defense is the idea of leveraging gaming, game technologies, and the community of gamers to advance our military. Wow. That gaming extends beyond just AR, VR, and XR, which are used prolifically throughout the military training and operations for realism and relevancy. Even something as simple as using a team-based, commercially developed video game to teach basic leadership skills like communication, resource management, etc., becomes useful. It sounds like this is a extensive program, Loki, and it looks like, well, there's a lot of room for people who might be interested in this.
Culture, if you ever played Elite Dangerous, I played Elite Dangerous with a team back in the day. We were all min-maxers, and we all would communicate and be like, okay, this is what's working really well for me, what's working really well for you. And then we would go in and actually implement it. So we'd go in a 3-man team and just completely decimate the AI and whatever we did because of those tactics, because of the working together, figuring out what works best, what doesn't, and min-maxing our builds. The three of us were constantly upping our game. I can totally see how this will work in the real world.
Right, exactly. And as a matter of fact, they explain that very concept by saying the command wants people who constantly question the status quo. Exactly what you were describing. You will rarely hear that in the military, as the other branches of the service focus on chain of command. Space Force operates so quickly and so critically, they need to get operational authority down as low as possible. They need to be lean and responsive. And I guess that would be something gamers would be able to maximize rather quickly. That's where gamers who can hold a 3D environment in their heads come in. Well, of course. Whether they're playing first-person shooters, real-time strategy, or world exploration titles, Reeves Stevens stresses that a young mind can operate in those worlds and can enjoy operating there at high speed. That's perfect for, say, taking the seat of a satellite operator in the Space Force. Wild. And that's why Space Force is so important. All it would take is, say, Russians or Chinese to detonate an EMP, which we were just talking about towards the beginning of the video, in the upper atmosphere, and we'd be living back in the 1950s. Amazing. If you want to read more on this story and find other resources, you can go check out Inside Hook. The story is actually tagged Space Force Wants You Gamers. So hopefully you get a chance to check that out. Loki, anything else you'd like to add before we put a cap on this one?
Don't ever put away VR. I know a lot of people bought VR helmets and they're like, I kind of like them, kind of don't like them. They can completely change your view in a game. Whereas you go from a flat screen and a forward-looking view, suddenly when you put on a VR helmet, You can look up, you can look around. In a tactical game where you were in a fighter or you were in a spaceship, the ability to look around in your cockpit completely changes the name of the game. And I love the fact that they pointed out in this article that they are using VR. That's something they absolutely definitely should do. We always get the guys on the screen. They're looking at the screen and controlling drones. Imagine controlling a drone, but instead of just looking at a screen and looking through a camera, you have a 180-degree view around you. Imagine the tactical possibilities that open up. I love what they're doing. I love this idea, and I can't wait to hear more.
Me neither. So I'm very much looking forward to following up on this. I'm sure we will. We do cover gaming topics. This is aimed at you gamers. So I have to ask you, are you interested in joining an organization like Space Force that would actually have your gaming skills put to the test? Is this something that you feel like you've been training for all your life? And is this something that even interests you? I'm just curious, and that's why we ask the questions here at That Game Place. Let us know your answers down in the comments section below. And as always, game on!